I'm delighted to be joined by Elias Elias, Client Portfolio Manager for the emerging markets in Templeton Global Investors. Elias, emerging markets finished on a really strong note in 2025. What are the themes that are driving 26?
Indeed, 25 was a really good year for emerging markets overall. And looking into 2026, we're actually very constructive on the outlook for the asset class for a number of reasons. Firstly, if you look on the fundamental side, we see very strong earnings momentum continuing. EPS growth for EM is expected to average about 16% per annum over the next 3 years. That's compared to about 11% for developed market equities. Then valuations remain very attractive. EM equities are trading at about a 30% discount to their DM peers. But with higher earnings growth expectations, we think that the valuation gap should narrow over time. And finally, we're also very encouraged by the policy shifts and the reforms we see happening in many of the EM countries. For example, the value up proposition in Korea, the anti-involution in China, tax cuts and incentives by the government in India. All these are creating a very supportive backdrop for the asset class in our view.
So, really supportive backdrop, actually looking great in terms of earnings, good in terms of valuations. I have to play Cassandra here and ask, what are the macro issues that could go wrong? What headwinds could there be in 26?
I would say we're keeping an eye on inflation and the stickiness on inflation, particularly in the US. If the inflation doesn't come down as much as expected, we think there's a risk that the Fed may change its pace of policy easing and slow it down, which would translate into a stronger dollar. And that's typically a headwind for emerging markets. Another risk, I would say, is certainly in an emerging markets perspective, is that we live in a very volatile world. A lot of unpredictable events can happen, impacting commodity prices, trade policies, or GDP growth. So that's something we're really keeping an eye on, with a number of elections coming up also in Latin America throughout 2026. That's something to kind of keep an eye on.
As we go into 26, what are the key themes in the portfolios?
One thing we're really excited about is that a lot of the EM companies are leaders in the industries of the future, whether it's semiconductors powering AI and the AI rollout, whether it's EVs, whether it's automation and robotics. We see a lot of emerging market companies leading in technology and innovation in these fields that are multi-year growth opportunities. Another theme we're really excited about as well is rising domestic consumption in EM markets. EM has a very young population, but they also has a very large and growing middle-class consumer. And if you look at the penetration levels of many goods and services in EM economies versus DM, these penetration levels are still very low and have room to grow. So we think there's a lot of interesting opportunities with that increased penetration levels, driving corporate earnings and driving growth. And we have that exposure in the portfolio as well.
So a very positive backdrop for 2026 for emerging markets. Elias Elias, Templeton Global Investors, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.